Maru is an ugly, useless fool who faces the most humiliating rejection from his crush, just like you, but still ends up becoming a K-pop idol who rizzes up the entire school. Before this glow-up, he was as delusional as you are, believing that he could bag a baddie that was way out of his league. He was so confident in himself that he rejected his best friend to confess to his crush. But karma got him back when she picked a celebrity who was way hotter than him. Feeling betrayed, he joined forces with his bestie, who also hated the to form a revenge plan against her and her boyfriend. Afterwards, he returns home but sees Abe, Kachi's boyfriend, on TV, and is more determined than ever to crush his balls. The next day, he meets up with Kuro to share more details of his revenge plan, saying that he needs to find Abe's weakness and expose it to the school so that everyone will see that the almighty Kachi completely destroyed the bar to date a scumbag. Kuro hypes the plan but tells him that he'll be left feeling empty after this, so he needs to gun for a plan that'll make him happy at the end. Frankly speaking, nothing will make Kuro happier than Kachi confessing her love for him, but this can only happen in his wildest dreams. Kuro then suggests that they pretend to date each other, because this might trigger Kachi's jealousy and make her want him more since she's basically treating him like a backup boyfriend. He reluctantly agrees, saying he'll be too embarrassed to be seen with her, though this should actually be her line. Kuro leans forward to kiss him and give him some post-nut clarity, but he's haunted by images of his crush, so he backs off like the coward that he is, though he would have only lasted about 3 strokes. Outside, Maru yells out in frustration and curses out loud as he plans to destroy that bloody Abe. However, he's shocked to the core when he finds that Abe has been standing there all this time. Even worse, Abe recognizes him by name and knows about his childhood acting career. Abe confronts Maru about why he dumped his acting career when he was so successful, because he was his biggest fan and used him as an inspiration to venture into the entertainment industry. But because Abe was so untalented that he wouldn't even be considered an extra on a movie cast, he became a hater, took stalking to a whole other level, and enrolled in Maru's school. There he learned that Kachi was Maru's crush, so Abe rizzed the heck out of her and got her to date him just to get back at Maru for being the actor that he'd never be. Maru gets pissed and wonders what Kachi sees in this dude because he's not shit. But Abe even worsens matters when he declares his intention to confess to Kachi at the upcoming festival. It's game on, so Maru meets Tetsu, his close friend, to sign him up as an actor in the cultural festival. Just then, Koro walks in and blasts him for ignoring her posts on Insta ever since they started dating. The whole class is shocked to see that this loser is actually dating someone they can only dream of talking to in their wildest dreams. Kachi watches him with this disappointed look that shows how much she's lost faith in men. So Maru goes on his knees like a simp and simps for her forgiveness. Actually, he's just apologizing because he needs her to help him write a really dope script like this one for their upcoming school play. She sweetly offers to write the script, but bills him a crazy amount and gives him her number. Later, she hits him up so they can discuss the details of the script over a call, but he starts acting like a virgin on his first time before Kuro, who lives next door, walks in to beg for food. His place is messy, so she helps him clean up, but she comes across a photo of Maru as a kid, standing with an actor's son. He explains his relationship with the boy, but Kuro can't believe that he's got that much steez to hang out with popular folks. Just then, Kachi's call comes in, and he lies that he's about to talk to Tetsu, then gets into his room. However, Kuro keeps yelling from the other room and just won't let him enjoy this conversation with Kachi, so Kachi says they'll just talk in the library. When he gets off the call and confesses the truth to Kuro, she tells him that Kachi is actually acting so damn weird, and it looks like her niceness is all a conjoined plot with Abi to mess Maru up. Besides, the script Kachi's writing could just really be a sabotage to get Maru on the losing end, so Kuro discourages Maru from acting, but she reassures him that she likes him even though he's good for nothing. They get all cozy, and Maru tries kissing Kuro, but backs out like a coward that he is, but she edges him on and is about to ride him all the way to Cloud 9 when Kachi's message interrupts them. He later goes to school to practice his lines, but suddenly faints on stage and wakes up in the clinic with Kachi by his side. Maru apologizes for messing up, but Kachi tells him it's okay and shows him that she's done with the script. He thanks her, but she asks him to pay in cash before she hands it to him. He starts begging for life because he's so broke that he survives on coupons, but Kachi tells him to stop being pathetic, and then she changes her mind. She says that his repayment will be for him to explain exactly why he stopped acting as a child. Reluctantly, Maru narrates that it all happened when he and his mother landed a role as mother and son in a drama, but she was involved in an accident that claimed her life. Afterwards, the movie was almost cancelled, but Maru pleaded for them to continue for his mom's sake. So they rose to fame, broke records, and never aired another season, mostly because Maru wasn't over his mom's death. As he finishes his narration, Kachi is moved to tears and hands him the movie script before walking away. All this while, Kuro's been eavesdropping on the conversation and looks like she's about to die with envy. On her way home, Kachi reminisces on her childhood memories, remembering how she was an untalented Anna kid and became one of Maru's biggest fans, to the extent that her dad took her to visit him. They became friends, and she promised to make him star in one of her plays that she'd write. But Maru ghosted her one day, and she swore to upgrade herself and spite him for leaving her. Kachi realizes that what she felt then was love, and that Maru is actually her first love. With tears, she internally confesses her love for him and acknowledges that love is a curse. Meanwhile, Kuro still isn't on board with the idea of Maru confessing to Kachi after his performance at the festival. So she discourages him by suggesting that Kachi will still turn him down. But Maru tells her to chill because he's just doing it for fun, and also tells her that he'll be busy practicing with Tetsu, so she shouldn't worry herself. The day of the festival finally arrives, and Adi warns Maru that he's cooking, and the result will shatter Maru's spirits. Later, everyone arrives and Maru's almost beaten to death by some big guy who has a crush on Kuro. But he's on the lookout for Kachi. Tetsu notices this but tells him that someone is looking for him, and when he follows up, he finds a creep who refuses to reveal his face. From the voice, he recognizes this voice to belong to Shiro, a childhood friend he hasn't contacted in a while. He tries moving closer, but Shiro draws back, confronts him for abandoning him, and reminds him about his promise to write a play that he'll star in. He tells him that he actually went on to improve himself and become a badass writer. Then he walks down the stairs and reveals his true self as Kachi. It turns out that Maru had always mistaken Shiro for a guy because he heard her name wrongly, and quite frankly, her childhood probe acts were pretty ugly. Kachi tells him that she leveled up because she wanted a strong comeback, but found out that Kuro was into Maru and was disappointed. Before she leaves, she encourages him to act well on their first script together, and on her way, she meets Kuro on the staircase. They reignite their rivalry against each other, and Kuro stirs up trouble from nowhere with Maru, acting out in her jealousy. She later slaps him so hard that she resets his brain, and says that this should serve as the end of their fake relationship. Sadly, she walks away and tells him she'll be watching and supporting him from the stands. The confession event begins, and a bunch of dickheads get up on stage to embarrass themselves, calling out to their crushes, one after the other. It's finally Abe's turn, and the entire hall is in a frenzy as he confesses his love for Kachi with a musical performance, though she could care less, quite frankly. While he's still performing, Maru walks on stage and takes up the challenge, shocking everyone when he performs way better than anyone would expect from a dachobak. After his performance, Maru gets hot, and he totally steals the spotlight from Abe. Then he makes his confession to Kachi. He begins by saying that he was actually in love with Kachi, but he got jealous of her relationship with Abe and wanted revenge on them. He then confesses that the one who truly matters to him is Kuro, and he shouts like a wasted idiot that he's in love with her. The shockwave is massive and hits everyone by surprise, and Maru goes on to explain that Kuro's always been by his side when the going gets tough. You'd think that this would actually make her agree, but she wickedly turns him down and shocks him to his core. After the whole event, Tetsu meets up with Abe and asks him why he played as a bad guy in this whole Maru-Kachi saga, and he says that it's because he wanted to help Kachi, who's like a sister to him. Apparently, they were never dating and were just pretending, so that Maru would get jealous. In fact, Abe's pretty much a really big fan of Maru's and is glad that he at least got to act again. Kuro turned Maru down because she wanted revenge for him turning her down the other time. In all these, Maru's the biggest loser and stays crying like a hopeless fool. The event has long passed, but Maru still can't shake off the horror of his literal burial in front of the entire school, which haunts him so badly that he has nightmares. But he's not alone on this one, as Kuro is also beating herself up for destroying the guy, even though she actually still likes him. Kachi is even worse and can't handle the fact that she was curved in all of this, even after her little scheming to get him so hooked on her. At the end of the day, neither of the ladies blame Maru, while he can't forgive himself and wonders how the heck he's going to show up at school. To make matters worse, the next day, Tetsu shows Maru that he's gone viral, and everyone's slamming him for being the dude that got dumped 1 million times. Maru gets mad and is about to send Tetsu to the other side of the veil, when a cutie walks into class and hops on his body. She's apparently named Momo, another celebrity Maru happens to know, and has missed him so much until the release of his viral display on stage. Kachi and Koro are saturated with jealousy and demand an explanation from Maru, but Momo saucily calls them his exes and assures him that she's here to get rid of the old hags. The ladies get offended as if it isn't the truth, but Maru explains that he used to be like a brother to her and that he used to teach her some acting skills. Momo adds that Maru taught her more than just that. To be precise, he was indeed teaching her other things, like the things you teach your girlfriend when no one's watching. To top it all off, Momo confesses that Maru is actually her first love. After the whole dilemma, Maru forgives Tetsu after begging for pizza, bought by another bouncy queen who walks in and introduces herself as Rena. She tells Maru to feel free to contact her when he needs any service at all, though the only service he needs is for her to lick his sausage. She actually got the pizza because she noticed that Maru might be the next celebrity, and she could cash out by getting closer. Just then, Kachi walks up to Maru with a flustered look on her face. But before she says anything, the dogs in his class get jealous and start barking for nothing. She then asks him to go out with her, and the whole place freezes for a minute because, of course, this is the almighty Kachi. Her friend, Maiko, explains that the sentence came out wrongly, and what Kachi really means is that she'd like to take Maru to meet her daddy, who was once his sponsor. He agrees and Koro walks in, but not without getting taunted by Kachi. As she draws nearer to him, Maru's PTSD gets the best of him, and he transforms into a little puppy, seeking cover behind Kachi. Kachi sneers at Koro and warns her to steer clear of Maru after doing him dirty like that. Otherwise, she'll use African voodoo to get rid of her. The poor girl stands defenseless and sadly walks away with tears in her eyes. Later, Tetsu calls Maru to tell him that he's no longer a viral topic online, then asks him about Koro to know if he's checked on her or if he's still mad at her. Maru explains that he's not mad at her or anything, but just a bit scared that he thought them to be besties, yet he somehow failed to fully understand her emotions. All the while, Tetsu has had the call on speaker, and when Koro hears this, she gets some form of reassurance about Maru's feelings. When he gets home, Maru finds the door unlocked, only to be welcomed by Momo in a maid cosplay, offering him anything he'd like to eat, including her cherry.
You serious?
He wonders where she got his key from, but she evades the topic and serves him dinner with recipes she'd learned from his mother before she passed. Maru realizes that she was the one who quieted down the paparazzis, so he thanks her, but she thanks him in return, saying she wouldn't have made it this far without his tutelage. Puzzled about the purpose of her visit, Maru asks her why she's at his place, so she explains that she needs him to help her out. Maru thinks that she's in deep shit, but she hands him a card belonging to some top dog in the industry, who had tasked her with the responsibility of luring Maru back to the spotlight. She also hands him a second card for Koro, because the boss developed an interest in her talent when he watched the video. Just then, Koro's sisters barge in, looking distressed, and tell him that Koro's literally lost her mind and has developed some form of amnesia. He freaks out and asks for further explanation, and then they tell him that she's been eating abnormally and stuff. Momo interrupts them and the sisters want to boil him alive for being a serial womanizer, especially the eldest of them, Midori. However, they realize that Momo is a celebrity and get a little simpy, except Midori. Later, Momo leaves them behind and Midori continues talking about Koro's condition, saying that she can't recall anything about her life from the moment she got rejected by Maru to the time she got back at him at the festival. At this point, the sisters say he doesn't deserve to be alive after being publicly humiliated. Before leaving, one of the sisters, Akane, tells him she's going to be proud of him if he returns to show business, though she'll be low-key sad because they'll miss him. But she emphasizes that he should choose wisely and with a positive mindset. In the morning, Koro apologizes to Maru and says that she can't remember what happened at the festival, but when she watched the video, she realized that she was a for saying no, even though she obviously still digs him. She moves closer to hold him, but he avoids her like she's got an STD, so she takes the hint and walks away, but tells him that they should start afresh. It seems he's forgotten the emotional damage this lady dished out to him a few days ago, because this doofus quickly gives her another chance and even begs her not to leave his side. Later, Kachi comes to pick him up and is still acting towards Kuro, so he tells her to stop it and tries to get them to be besties. But girls will be girls and they continue snobbing each other in the car. After observing her behavior, Kachi says she doesn't believe that Kuro has really lost her memories. Maru says they'll have to prove if it's really what it seems like, then come up with an idea. When they get to the library, he feeds her a disgusting octopus meal and waits for her to have a nasty reaction towards it, as she always does. But she acts like she's never had a bad experience with it. So this confirms to him that she really does have amnesia. He hands her the CEO's card, inviting her to join the entertainment industry, so she hugs him and says that she's willing to join him in showbiz if that's what he wants to pursue. Just then, Kachi and Tetsu join them, and Kachi almost raises hell after hearing him say that he's reconsidering returning to his acting career. Tetsu gets on her nerves and he gets whacked on the head by Maru, who teases him for being such an asshole to ladies for a man who can't even bag a of the lowest caliber. Later, they sit down to discuss an idea Tetsu came up with, which is to create an entertainment club. He suggests that since all Kachi has ever wanted to do is write a play that Maru would star in, she could use the club as an avenue to achieve that. Knowing Tetsu to be a grand schemer who's after his own little agenda, the ladies get curious about why he's suddenly springing up with such great ideas that benefit others. Maru tells them to give up on extracting any information from Tetsu because he'll only tell them the truth when he's ready. With that, the entertainment club is formed with its first few members, so Maru says he'll return to his old agency to present their club and gain them sponsors. Tetsu insists on following him, but refuses to tell him why and what he's really up to. Kachi also indicates that she's interested in following them because she'll love to know the details of the meeting. Later, they pull up to the agency with Momo, and Maru remembers that this was his first meeting point with her. She remarks on how wickedly talented he used to be for a guy who was so boring that he could put the entire planet to sleep. The CEO finally arrives and seems to be getting along so well with Maru, telling him to be a dropout like the top 10 men in Forbes magazine. When he turns his attention to Kuro, she politely declines his offer, but he tells her that she could become a multimillionaire in the next 3 years, while Maru would have thrice her net worth in that time. Unsurprisingly, Maru is excited to hear this because it means he can afford all the Kardashians, but the ladies aren't even smiling with him and are disgusted. The top guy tells Maru that as a matter of fact, there's already a big sponsor that wants him to shoot a commercial, who'd be swinging by later. It would be a great deal for the dumbass Kuro, but she declines and the manager keeps insisting, to the point that he even shames her and says she has no manners. This does it for Maru, who's had enough of this man's insults and empties a bottle of wine on his head while warning him to never insult his childhood bestie again. The dude gets angry and tells Maru that he and his friends are scum, but Tetsu won't swallow this calmly, so he jacks him by the collar when Maru holds him back. The man suddenly gets a call and they all think they're in deep shit, but Kachi's dad walks in and says he's the sponsor in need of Maru's for his ad. He listens to their side of the story with Momo, who comes up with a solution that won't land Maru in jail. She says that they should have a commercial contest, and if Maru loses, he'll have to work for the dumb dude. But if Maru wins, the dude won't involve the cops and would refrain from damaging Maru's reputation with other agencies. She tells Maru to team up with his friends and also asks Kachi's dad for some support to back them up. But she tears Maru apart when she says that she'll be acting in the commercial, but on the Mogul's team. They'd all gather around to plan for the ad, and Kachi says she has a great idea. Meanwhile, Momo reflects on her backstory, recalling what her life was like before she met Maru. She had grown up in an abusive home and only had an older sister to fall back on for support, until she was scouted by the agency that recognized her talent, and that was where she met Maru. He had always advised her to be more confident and live up to her talents, so she promised to do just that, but then he suddenly quit acting one day. Back to the present, Momo and her sister sit to watch Maru's ad with his friends, but Momo observes that while it's great, it isn't exactly focused on the central theme of the ad. She calls him to fix things up, and he surprises her with an even better ad for the energy drink, focused on some zombie-type thing. When she watches it, Momo is relieved and instantly knows that Maru's ad will outshine hers. As expected, his commercial gets twice the number of votes compared to the agency's, so he and his friends celebrate over drinks. Later, Tetsu meets up with Kachi's father and explains that he came up with the entertainment club because the dumb CEO guy is his father, and he hates him so much that he wants his agency to crumble. So he tried to accomplish that by drawing Maru into his own corner. Now he has finally gotten Kachi's dad to be his sponsor, so he's already on the path to success. On his way out, he meets Abe, who's in the loop about what's going on, but asks him how his friends are and who the greatest beneficiary of the project is. Tetsu says that Kuro's the biggest winner and narrates how he came up with a plan with her. She offered to fake her amnesia so that she could draw Maru closer and make him hate the agency's director by provoking the man to say mean things to her, knowing it wouldn't fly well with Kuro. Now that these goals have been achieved, Tetsu says that Kuro isn't the only winner, but Momo too, who has successfully left the agency and transferred to their school. Kuro and Kachi are so close to circumcising him again, but he explains that he advised Momo to join them because she needed saving from the agency's director. However, Momo confesses that it wasn't her primary reason and that she just wants to be close to the love of her life, which is him, of course. The ladies get furious again, so he runs for safety and is rescued by Rena. She asks him why he's still friends with Tetsu despite the fact that they barely get along, and he says that it's because Tetsu is the only one who isn't trying to benefit off the fact that he's a famous actor, and is instead always standing by him. The next day, Maru finds out that he got played, as Kuro never really had amnesia, so he yells at her, and they get into a heated argument that still leaves him as the loser, because he still doesn't get why she had to lie to him. On his bed, he starts overthinking the issue and tries to understand why Kuro faked her amnesia. His good half suggests that she was doing it to salvage their relationship, whereas the devil in him warned him to stay away from her, because she's up to no good and probably wants to harm him again. Meanwhile, Kachi receives a call from Abe, who tells her that she's losing in the love triangle because Kuro and Maru are now back to default and are as close as they used to be before the festival. She asks him if he's down on taking her own side, and he says he doesn't mind as long as he benefits from the whole thing, so she tells him she's got an idea. The next day, Tetsu initiates Momo into the entertainment club and goes over the membership rights and rules of the club. He says the official members will have the right to veto and vote in favor of whoever becomes a new member of their club. For their first club activity, Tetsu proposes a swimming activity with some stage performance to serve as an opportunity to publicize their club. The ladies get upset and feel used by these rascals, so Kuro calls them out on their BS, but Kuro, being the pathetic simp he is, gets down on his knees and starts begging for nudes. The whole thing becomes a minor scuffle and the girls vote against it, but the vote comes out in favor of swimsuits, so Kachi suspects Kuro of being a snitch and voting in favor of the boys. The activity is slated for a 3-day weekend, but Kuro says she can't make it because her sisters need her support at home. But Tetsu suggests bringing them over if it's possible. While Maru is excited about the whole thing, he catches a stray from Kuro, who mocks him for being the dumbest student in the class with a CGPA as low as his body count. When they ask about where the vacay will be hosted, Tetsu says that Kachi's father offered them his residence, and this makes Kuro suspect that these two are working together, and that Kachi was using Tetsu to achieve her own agenda. Kachi defends herself even though she's actually the devil in this case, and Maru backs her up, disagrees with Kuro, and tells her that she's making false speculations. This upsets her because she feels he never trusts a word she says. Later, Kuro's sister comes to help him clean up, but she becomes really self-aware and starts acting like a in the heat season. Later, they both have dinner and she asks Maru what happened between him and Kuro. When he narrates their stupid love story, the poor girl feels so bored, like she's lost some IQ just by listening to their dumb story. Maru asks her who's in the wrong, and she says they're actually both idiots, but Maru has some trust issues. She tells him to be more open to understanding that Kuro won't be as open and expressive as he is, then tell him not to make careless decisions since he's not sure he's really in love with him. Finally, she tells him to beware of the ladies he'll be traveling with because they might seduce him, knowing fully well that he and Kurt are fighting and taking advantage of the situation. Meanwhile, Tetsu had a conversation with Kachi's father, begging him not to reveal this secret, which was that Rena was actually his sister. As he recalls the conversation, Kachi calls him, thanks him for helping her implement her plan, and tells him to watch out for her revenge attack, which is getting Maru to confess his love for her when Kuro isn't around. The day finally approaches and Momo's sister threatens Maru that he shouldn't have his eyes on anyone apart from Momo if he doesn't want her to chop his sausage for dinner. At the mall, Kachi remarks on the fact that it's quite surprising to hear that Momo can cook, because she looks like a spoiled brat, and besides, she's a celebrity. Momo finds that offensive and then challenges her to a cook-off. Tetsu overhears this and wishes him good luck on probably getting poisoned to death, but Maru feels this is unfair because Tetsu should join him to taste the meals. Momo's sister knocks some sense into their skulls and has them select a theme for the meal. Then they all settle on hot pot, although Kachi isn't too comfortable with this. Later, Tetsu catches Maru zoning out and figures that he must be thinking about Kuro, so he advises him to find a solution in his love life that keeps all the girls happy. For instance, keeping a harem. Though Maru isn't really that kind of guy, no dude will pass up the opportunity to have a harem. So Maru gives it some thought as he walks away. Unknown to them, Momo and Rena are eavesdropping on their conversation, and Momo realizes that she's not even gonna stand a chance against Kachi and Kuro when it comes to having Maru's romantic interest. So she decides that while the other two are busy fighting for his affection, she'll step in and get closer to him. When they get to Kachi's villa, Maru gets into simp mode and almost licks her feet because he's so poor, and this is the closest he's ever been to such luxury. When they get in, Kachi allocates some rooms to those present, while the rest of the rooms are allocated to Kuro and her sisters. They get on the balcony, and Tetsu throws Maru into the pool, kick-starting a session of playful fights among them. Meanwhile, Kuro's busy with her activities, and her sister brings up the fact that Maru is probably having the time of his life being surrounded by so many baddies in bikinis and having a chance to peek at their rice cakes. She tortures herself with the idea and almost demolishes the entire building, so her sister calls for backup to restrain her. Later, Rena reveals her pretty swimsuit as she joins the others on the beach, but Tetsu catches Maru's lingering eyes on his sister's melons and almost decapitates him. Just then, Kachi texts him to come meet her at a private area on the beach so she can show him her own swimwear. The idiot runs like a fool, only to find her dressed in some disappointing robe of the sort. But Kachi switches on the naughty girl in her and strips for him, almost making the poor guy lose his mind. He tells her she's so dropped gorgeous, he could bury his face in her honey pot, and she's moved to tears because she's always wanted to hear him say shit like that. She asks to sit with him, and he gives her some room, but Lady Kachi turns on the heat and sits right on his throbbing sausage.
Oh my.
As things are about to get R-rated, stupid Momo spoils the show. She calls Maru to let him know that she's been watching them, and Tetsu has a video of Kachi's little display. Before he can say jack, Momo rushes at him and insists that she also wants to sit on his lap. Later, they assemble for practice, and after Momo's flawless performance, Kachi comes up with some grandma moves that make Maru question his taste in women. When it's his turn, Maru effortlessly pulls off the moves and makes the others jealous because they wonder why the gods will bless such a moron with so much talent. Afterwards, he encourages Kachi to think of someone she wants to dance for, and it'll make it easy for her to actually challenge herself. Later, he meets Momo preparing for the cooking contest and asking for his help. But when he hears that Kachi just ran out front without saying a word, he abandons her to check on Kachi. Kachi is out on the beach being so depressed about the fact that her cooking skills stink like yours, and that typically disqualifies her as anime wife material. However, Maru overhears her lamenting and tells her she doesn't have to be strong or anything, and it's good for her not to overexert herself to look perfect. He also found that she had taken the time to learn how to prepare his favorite, which is fried chicken, so he appreciates her and tells her that she can prepare that instead. They get up and are about to kiss each other when he remembers the advice one of Kuro's sisters gave him against falling for a woman's charms, so he refrains and lets go of her hand. Much later, when he's asleep, Kuro and her sisters show up to his greatest shock. For some weird reason, Kuro feels like picking a fight with Maru, but her sister restrains her. Later, the ladies practice their dance routine, and Maru compliments Kachi, saying that her moves are a lot better than the previous ones. Kuro overhears this and feels unhappy, so she decides to come up with a little plan of hers. Later, she shows up in her swimwear and has Maru reconsider the friend zone between them. His cultured eyes can't stay on one woman, though, and his eyes linger on the lineup of melons in front of him. Later, Hidori sees Kachi from afar and tells her sister that she can't compete with Kachi because she's got the body, the face card, and the persona of an IG baddie, while Kuro doesn't even have a good personality to compensate with. At this point, Kuro has been violated enough, so she walks out and drags Maru into the bushes to take out her frustrations on him. She asks him why he doesn't trust her at all, and he says he only has a problem with the fact that she lied to him, and instead of apologizing, she's chosen to be a gaslighter. She then pins him on the ground and tells him that she's declaring war on the others because she's going to start being unnecessarily lovey-dovey with him. Maru is shocked because he's never seen this side of her, but she tells him to brace up because he's not even seen anything. At the beach, she sneaks up on him and keeps confessing love to him more times than he's ever heard in his life. By the time she's done with him, Maru is almost allergic to love confessions, but somehow it seems like Kuro's worked herself into his brain, and he struggles with the fact that she's breaking through the android in him. After, he goes to study with her and realizes that she had taken so much time to prepare the study questions, focusing on his weaknesses and questions he was unable to solve in the obvious tests. With this, he accepts that Koro has always been in his corner and that she was the only reason he got into high school, despite the fact that they said he had the brain of a first grader. After Kane helps Maru and Tetsu set up the stage, and at sunset, Maru sees Kachi in pain from so much dance practice, so he asks Midori to help take a look at her feet. He later finds her practicing and eavesdrops on her conversation with her friend. Kachi says she's going to take it easy on Maru and instead be supportive of him when he needs help. She continues to practice despite her wounds, determined to prove herself to Maru and show that she's an independent woman. Kachi acknowledges that this whole first love drama is eating away at her, and while Maru watches her, he gets into his feelings and sheds a tear. Meanwhile, Kane watches them from afar and tells her sister that she kinda has feelings for Maru. But there's no way in hell she can compete with the horde of women who are interested in Maru. And she has to keep lying to herself and dying inside to numb the pain, especially because two of her sisters are also dying for Maru. In the morning, Koro tries to get Maru's attention, but he walks straight over to Kachi and checks on her foot. As she watches these two, Koro is dying with hurt inside, but she still goes on for the video shoot with Kachi and Momo like nothing's happening. The girls do a really great job on the video shoot, but Kachi accidentally trips, and Maru runs to catch her but gets injured in the process, and they rush to get him help. Later, Abe meets up with Tetsu to get updates about which of the girls Maru is currently in love with. The obvious answer is Kachi, and somehow, even though she kept messing up in her routines, the fact that she was always putting her best was somehow attractive to Maru. To make matters worse, Maru will be moving into Kachi's house because her father wants her to be responsible for him since he got wounded while trying to save her. This is just quite messy, and even though Koro tries to protest this, she doesn't have much of a say because Kachi's father has already sought permission from Kurt's dad, so it's final. While in the bathroom, Maru goes wild and imagines all the nasty things he'll be doing with Kachi, but the girls come to check on him and interrupt his climax. Momo assumes that he's having a runny tummy and suggests that one of the ladies poisoned him with her bad cooking. Later, Koro's sisters decide to pay them a visit and bring some stuff for her. But when Maru tries talking to them, they avoid him like a plague, and Midori explains that they're probably fed up with his chronic womanizing. He tries to hold Midori's hands, but she freaks out and says that she's a teenager with rushing hormones. She doesn't let him off the hook, though, and kicks him into unconsciousness before she walks away. Koro comes to console him and still whispers dirty things in his ear to add to his injuries. Unfortunately, she gets a call from her mom saying that she can't stay over at Kachi's, and Momo is also told the same thing. Momo heads home and tells Maru to keep his sausage in his pants before she returns. When he gets in, Kachi's maid gives him an earful and calls him a philanderer, telling him that he shouldn't mistake Kachi's respect for him to be love. Maru's not feeling this maid at all and thinks she's even dumber than he is, but when Kachi walks in, they pretend to be doing just fine. Kachi tells them she'll get changed into some clothes and they resume their beef. At her place, Koro's hurting over Kachi's words to her because she called her aside to rub it in that she shouldn't feel like she has any advantage over her because she's right next door, because Kachi is probably going to be sharing a bed with Maru this night. Koro's haunted, but this feels like she just can't give up like that. The next day, the Association of Moronic Simps gathers to welcome Momo to their school with their banners, happy because they get to exist in the same space with her. But then they see her getting all lovey-dovey with that unfortunate Maru and turn into an angry mob. Luckily for him, Kachi shows up with her scary face, tells them to heck off, and also tells Momo to return to her class. She feeds him while Koro watches enviously, but he sees her maid and remembers her warning about mistaking Kachi's respect for love. Then he walks out of class. Koro follows him and asks him if he spent all night buried in between Kachi's legs, and he vehemently denies it because Kachi forced him to listen to some boring classical music. While they're talking, Tetsu hits them up and tells them both to meet him for an urgent talk. He tells them that some media houses are requesting an interview with Maru to discuss why he suddenly disappeared from the screen and is now reappearing abruptly. Koro says it'll be insensitive because it'll mean digging up Maru's old wounds and hurting him again. Maru himself says he's not invested in talking to media folks who will conceal the truth from the rest of the world. To counter this problem, Tetsu suggests that they release the documentary themselves and expose the real truth behind Maru's disappearance from the spotlight. They watched the initial movie to tell Maru's story and found that since he was way younger at the time, he couldn't finish acting the role, which required him to be a little grown up. So they decide to shoot the latter part of the movie by themselves and reject offers from other media houses. Later, Kuro calls Momo and Kachi for a meeting, and they all agree to be a little less possessive with Maru, because there's enough of him to go around. With that, Momo says she has a suggestion concerning Maru's documentary, and it seems like a plan that could give each of the ladies an edge over the other. But this was Momo's little trick to win Maru's affection. Later, Kachi's maid activates her inner demon and signs her name on Maru's bandages, but he wakes up and nabs her in the act. In the process of denying that she did it, she ends up in a missionary position on him, but Kuro catches her like that and woots her silly. They sit to eat lunch and get a text from Tetsu requesting an urgent meeting. Apparently, someone else had published Maru's documentary, none other than that dumb director who pissed Maru off. He lied that Maru's mother was involved in an accident that happened while on set, but that isn't the full story. They're riled up, but Tetsu calms them down and assures them that he'll deal with the director. Apparently, another major company is interested in Maru's story, so he gets Maru's approval to shoot the documentary, and the girls offer to interview Maru to get more details from his past. First up is Kachi, and she reminds Maru about an adventure he once took her on in their childhood, where they were headed to see a tower he wanted her so badly to see. She wasn't up for it because she was scared, but Maru encouraged her not to fear anything and taught her to be courageous. When she finishes her narration, they lean closer to each other for a kiss, but realize that they're live, so they just schedule a date to visit the tower. They return home looking like they've lost their virginity, so Kachi's maid, Shion, gets curious and hounds Maru to know what he's done to her boss. But when she sees a lovely picture of Kachi, she gets frenzied and promises to be nicer to Maru in exchange for the picture. But this one is an absolute crackhead, so she immediately goes back on her word, though Maru had already prepared himself for that just in case. Meanwhile, Kachi's so happy that her first date with Maru was so memorable, and this could mean that she's finally won him over. She's about to kiss him the next morning when Momo barges in like bad luck and spoils the show. She starts feeling him up and fusses so much about his abs, which are surprisingly toned for such a moron. But at least he goes to the gym, unlike you. Kachi refuses to pass up this opportunity, so she knows Momo will harass the poor lucky dude. But when Shion walks in on them, she's horrified to see this threesome happening right under her watch without being invited. She could have simply joined them, but she chose violence. Later, Momo takes Maru on a date and is really hyped because this was her idea, and she feels that her backstory will be the strongest of all three. She recalls that she always tried to improve herself just to get good enough in her career and please Maru. And while his mother was still alive, she tried learning about his favorite meals for her. Momo decides to take him to the scene of the accident that claimed his mother's life and asks him to narrate what happened, because even if it would be a painful memory, her plan is to stick by him and walk him through it so that she can win his affections. He narrates how he lost his mother and emphasizes that she died because she was overworking herself for a role. So after doing his best to make that movie a reality, Maru could no longer save it because he was plagued by his grief. While recording this, Momo feels terrible because she's always been so selfish and made Maru's sudden disappearance all about herself. So she breaks down in tears and apologizes for not being understanding when she needed to be. She tells him that she really loved his mom and was also shattered to hear that she passed, because she was a perfect image of the mother she never had. Maru also breaks down uncontrollably and realizes how sad he is. Then they console each other in a warm embrace. Afterwards, Momo promises that she won't tell anyone that he cried like a baby, and then they return home. Back there, they start teasing each other, but Shion walks in and spoils their romance. So they lure her with some pictures, and she lets them get away with it, but not before fracturing Maru's leg again with a kick that quite frankly qualifies her to be a UFC contestant and not a maid. At school, Tetsu informs Maru that the ladies will be performing in the play, and they have to act quickly now that there's some calm in the media space. Later, Kuro picks Maru up for their date and takes him on a walk, during which she reflects on the timeline of her relationship with Maru. She's been in love with him since elementary school, even before he rose to stardom. To her sisters, Maru was like family, and they still loved him for who he was even after he suddenly disappeared from the screens, and others were saying all sorts of negative things to him. One day, she noticed that he hadn't been visiting as often, so she trailed him behind and found him in a cave. Right now, that's where she's taking him, and Maru recognizes it in a heartbeat. As kids, they had so much fun in there, because it was Maru's comfort zone. After relishing the memories, they sit there in front for a while and enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. They later head out to the field, where Kuro confesses her love for him, and tells him that she's for real this time around. Maru wonders why she rejected him when he asked her out at the festival, and she tells him that she only wanted revenge for the time that he turned her down in class. Tearfully, Maru tells Kuro that he was frustrated by the fact that she'd rather keep things to herself than tell him, so finding out how she feels now is comforting for him. Kuro asks him to give her an answer, and he instantly remembers that he has two other side chicks who have confessed their love for him. He realizes that he loves her, but he's also in love with someone else, because he's just as confused as these rappers with 20 baby mamas. While he's still thinking, Kuro tells him that his time is up, and that his response will be invalid, because anything longer than 10 seconds would mean that he isn't fully committed to her and has someone else on his mind. She says that she understands how life isn't exactly black and white, so she proposes a weird situationship in which she'll be his childhood girlfriend, qualifying her to date him sometime in the future when the conditions are just right. Maru really digs this idea because it means he can squeeze melons for free, but he gets slapped with the reality that if he even mistakenly kisses her, then they're officially a couple. She tells him to keep the relationship secret, and they happily walk back home. The next day, Abe tells Tetsu that he's watched Maru's documentary and seen that Kuro played a smart move on Maru because she neither got rejected nor accepted, but somehow created an assurance for a possible romantic relationship in the future. Later, Tetsu tells Maru that he has a fan club of girls fawning over him in school, but his main chicks won't let them even an inch close to him. Do you think Maru will ever leave the friend zone? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and if you like anime recaps, watch this video.